qui l'impact existait à propos des fermiers.
I know this sounds absolutely insane. I know exactly what you're thinking right now because I'd be thinking the same thing if someone told me the story. You're probably already dismissing it, already coming up with rational explanations for what I'm about to tell you. But I swear on everything I hold dear, on every important thing in my life, that what I'm about to tell you actually happened. Every single word of it is true. Every moment I'm going to describe is real, even the part that seems most impossible, especially the part that seems most impossible. The part where the creature actually spoke to me, not in growls or grunts or animal sounds, but in an actual word I could understand. A clear human word that came from something that wasn't human at all. What happened that week in the mountains changed everything I thought I knew about the world, changed how I see reality itself. I've been going to this cabin for years now, 8 years to be exact. It belonged to my uncle, who passed it down to me when he got too old to make the trip anymore. He'd had it for decades before that. It's become my escape from everything, my refuge. A few times a year, usually in spring and fall when the weather's best, I pack up my car and drive out there alone. No phone service once you get past the main highway, no internet, no television, no distractions at all, just me and the forest and the quiet. The cabin sits about 2 hours from the nearest town if you're taking the paved roads, tucked deep into the woods in an area where most people never go. The last 30 minutes of the drive is on a dirt road that's barely maintained, full of potholes and washouts. Most people wouldn't even know it was there. The cabin itself is not fancy or anything. Just a simple one-room structure my uncle built himself back in the 70s. Wood stove for heat and cooking, a small kitchen area with a hand pump for water from the well, a couch that pulls out into a bed, some shelves with books and supplies, an outhouse about 20 yards away in the trees. That's it. No electricity, no plumbing, no modern conveniences. But it's mine now, and it's perfect for what I need it to be. A place to disconnect completely, a place where I can just be. This particular trip was in early autumn, late September, when the leaves were just starting to turn. The aspens were going golden, and the oak leaves were beginning to show red and orange at the edges. The air had that crisp feeling that makes you want to be outside all day. That perfect temperature where you need a light jacket in the morning, but by afternoon you're comfortable in just a shirt. I drove up on a Friday afternoon, left work a bit early to beat the weekend traffic on the highway. Took my time with the drive, stopped at the little general store in the last town to pick up some fresh supplies even though I'd brought most of what I needed from home. The drive-in on the dirt road was rough as always. Had to navigate around a couple of new washouts from the late summer rains. Saw a deer and her fawn at one point, just standing beside the road watching my car go past. When I finally pulled up to the cabin around 4 in the afternoon, everything looked exactly as I'd left it 3 months before. The porch was covered in fallen leaves and pine needles. A few branches had come down in storms and were scattered around the clearing. But the cabin itself was solid and waiting. I spent that first evening just unpacking and settling in. Brought in all my supplies from the car, swept out the cabin, got a fire going in the wood stove to take the chill off. Made myself some simple vegetable soup from the canned goods I'd brought. Sat on the porch as the sun went down, watching the sky turn orange and pink through the trees, listening to the evening sounds of the forest waking up. Owls starting to call, small animals rustling through the underbrush. That peaceful quiet that only exists far away from civilization. I read for a while by lantern light, just a paperback mystery I'd picked up, then went to bed early. That first day was completely normal, peaceful, exactly what I'd expected it to be. exactly what I'd needed. The second morning started off normal too. I woke up around 7 when the sunlight started coming through the window above the bed. Made coffee on the wood stove using the old metal percolator my uncle had always used. The smell of coffee brewing mixed with wood smoke is one of my favorite things in the world. While the coffee was brewing, I ate some toast with jam, standing at the kitchen counter and looking out at the forest. The weather was perfect, cool but not cold, with morning sun filtering through the trees in those beautiful slanted rays that make everything look magical. Like the whole forest was glowing. After breakfast, I took a short walk around the immediate cabin property, just a loop through the trees, checking things out, getting my bearings again. I do this every time I arrive, just to reacquaint myself with the area. I noted where some new mushrooms were growing after the rains, saw tracks from what looked like a fox or coyote, found a tree that had come down since my last visit, a big pine that must have been struck by lightning. The forest was in good shape overall, healthy, alive. By mid-morning, I was back on the porch with my book and a fresh cup of coffee, just enjoying the quiet. The temperature had warmed up nicely and I'd taken off my jacket, draped it over the porch railing. I was maybe 3 chapters into my book, completely absorbed in the story when I first heard the sounds. At first, I thought it was just some animal off in the distance. The forest is full of sounds if you listen. Birds calling, squirrels chattering, branches creaking, wind through the leaves. But as I listened more carefully, putting my book down and really focusing, I realized this sound didn't fit. It was whimpering, almost like crying, but not in a way that sounded like any animal I'd heard before. Not a coyote, which can sound eerily human sometimes. Not a bird. Not anything I could immediately identify. There was something odd about it, something that made the hair on my arms stand up, something that made me pay real attention. The sound would stop for a bit, maybe 30 seconds or a minute of silence. Then it would start again. Each time, it seemed to be coming from the same direction. East of the cabin, maybe 10 or 15 minutes into the forest if I had to guess the distance. Not moving around like an animal traveling would, just staying in one spot. I love animals, always have. Even as a kid, I was the one bringing home injured birds and trying to nurse them back to health. So when I hear something that sounds like an animal in distress, my first instinct is to check it out, see if maybe there's something I can do to help. Maybe it's an animal caught in something or injured. I put my book down on the porch chair, grabbed my walking stick from where it leaned beside the door, and headed into the trees in the direction of the sound. The sounds continued as I walked. I'd go a few yards, then stop and listen to make sure I was still heading the right direction. The whimpering was getting clearer, but not really louder, which suggested I was getting closer, but it wasn't a very loud sound to begin with. Definitely whimpering. Sometimes almost like a child crying, but muffled somehow, like someone crying with their face pressed into a pillow. The similarity to a human child was unsettling. But I pushed the thought away, probably just my brain trying to make sense of an unfamiliar sound by comparing it to something known. I followed the sound carefully, watching where I stepped. The forest floor was covered in fallen leaves and pine needles, making it easy to walk quietly if you were careful. I didn't want to come crashing through the underbrush and scare whatever animal was making the sound. Better to approach slowly and assess the situation before committing to anything. After about 10 minutes of walking, weaving between trees and overfallen logs, I came to a small clearing. Not a big meadow or anything, just a gap in the trees where something had fallen years ago and created a space where sunlight could reach the ground. The whimpering was very close now, very clear, just on the other side of some thick bushes at the far edge of the clearing, maybe 20 feet from where I stood. I approached slowly, my heart beating faster now, though I wasn't sure why. Just a feeling of anticipation. of something important about to happen. The walking stick felt solid in my hand. I pushed through some low-hanging branches, stepped around a rotting stump, and came up to the bushes where the sound was coming from. I carefully pushed the branches aside and looked through, then I froze completely, didn't move a muscle, didn't even breathe for a moment. My brain just stopped working for several seconds because what I was seeing didn't make any sense at all. Didn't fit into any category of things that should exist. There was a creature standing upright on two legs in a small hollow behind the bushes, mostly hidden by the branches, but visible enough for me to see what it was, or more accurately, what it wasn't. It was small, maybe 3 feet tall, possibly 3.5, covered entirely in dark reddish-brown fur that looked thick and soft. But it wasn't a bear, definitely not a bear. I'd seen plenty of bears in these woods over the years, including cubs, and this was nothing like them. The proportions were completely wrong for a bear. The arms hung down too long, reaching past where the knees would be. The legs were too straight, too upright, too similar to human legs. And the face was the strangest thing I'd ever seen. It was turned toward me and I could see it clearly through the branches. It had human-like features but covered in hair, a flat nose, not a snout, full lips, a rounded face with a prominent brow, and the eyes, large dark eyes, probably twice the size of human eyes relative to the face, that were looking right at me with unmistakable emotion. Pure fear. This creature was terrified of me. My first thought, after my brain started working again after that initial freeze, was that this must be what people call Bigfoot or Sasquatch. I'd heard the stories like everyone has, seen the grainy photos and shaky videos on television shows, heard people talk about encounters. But I'd never believed them, never even really thought about them seriously beyond dismissing them as folklore or misidentifications or hoaxes. But here was something that matched those descriptions exactly, except it was small. A baby, a child, whatever the right word would be for a young version of something that wasn't supposed to exist. The creature started backing away when it saw me looking at it, and the whimpering got louder, more distressed. It was afraid of me. Terrified, actually. Those big eyes were wide with fear, and its small body was trembling. I could see it shaking, and I realized in that moment that I was probably the scary one here. A big human appearing out of nowhere, pushing through the bushes, looming over this small thing while it was alone and vulnerable and already upset about something. From its perspective, I was probably the monster. I did what felt natural, what my instincts told me to do, which looking back was probably incredibly stupid, dangerous even. But I wasn't thinking about that. I slowly knelt down, trying to make myself smaller, less threatening. I held out my hand in what I hoped was a calm, peaceful gesture, palm up, fingers relaxed, and I started making soft sounds, the kind of gentle noises you make to calm a scared dog or cat. Soft, shushing sounds, low hums, keeping my voice quiet and soothing. I wasn't thinking about the danger, wasn't thinking about the basic wilderness rule that if you see a baby animal, the mother is probably close by. And mothers protecting their young are the most dangerous animals you can encounter. A mother bear defending cubs will attack anything, even humans, would rip you apart without hesitation. And this was something much more mysterious than a bear, something I knew nothing about. For all I knew, the mother was watching me right now from the trees, deciding whether I was a threat to her baby. But in that moment, kneeling there in front of this terrified little creature, all I saw was something that needed someone to be gentle with it, something that needed help. So I stayed there, kneeling, hand out, making soft sounds and speaking in the calmest voice I could manage, telling it I wouldn't hurt it, that everything was okay, that it was safe. The small Bigfoot stopped backing away. It stood there watching me, head tilted slightly to the side like it was trying to figure me out, like it was thinking about what to do, weighing its options. I could almost see the wheels turning behind those expressive eyes. We stayed like that for what felt like a long time, but was probably only a minute or two. Neither of us moving, just watching each other. Then, very slowly, the creature took one tiny step forward. Just one small step, maybe 6 inches. I stayed completely still, barely breathing. Didn't want to do anything that might scare it back into retreat. Another step, then it stopped again, watching me, studying my face, looking at my extended hand. This pattern continued for maybe 20 minutes, a step or two forward, tentative and careful. Then a long pause where it would just stand there, watching me, deciding if it was safe to continue. Each time it got closer, I could see it a little better, could make out more details. Its face really did look almost childlike under all that fur. The bone structure underneath seemed remarkably human, a flat nose, not long like a dog or protruding like an ape, full lips that pressed together when it was thinking, a rounded chin. The fur on its face was shorter than on the rest of its body, and I could see the skin underneath in places, dark skin, almost black. The eyes were the most striking feature, so large and dark like pools of ink, but not empty like an animal's eyes. There was thought there, awareness, emotion, fear, yes, but also curiosity, intelligence. The hands looked remarkably human too, just covered in the same reddish-brown hair as the rest of it. 5 fingers on each hand, long fingers with what looked like fingernails, not claws. It kept flexing them nervously, opening and closing its small hands, making fists and then releasing them. A very human gesture of anxiety. It was breathing heavily, and I could see its small chest rising and falling rapidly under the fur. Still scared, but also curious. The combination of fear and curiosity seemed very childlike, very familiar. Eventually, it got to about 6 feet away from me and stopped there. This seemed to be its comfort distance, close enough to see me clearly, but far enough to run if needed. I kept talking softly, barely above a whisper, kept my hand extended but not reaching toward it, just staying open and calm and non-threatening, making myself as safe and friendly as possible. The creature seemed to relax bit by bit as the minutes passed. Its breathing slowed down. The tension in its small body eased slightly. The whimpering stopped completely. I told it I wasn't going to hurt it, that I just wanted to help, that it was safe with me. I don't know if it understood the words, but I think it understood the tone, the gentleness, the lack of aggression. Animals are good at reading tone and body language. Whatever this creature was, it seemed to have that same ability, maybe even more so. After about half an hour of this, maintaining this careful distance, the creature took another step forward, then another. It came close enough that it could have touched me if it wanted to, if it extended its arm fully. I still didn't move toward it at all, didn't reach for it, let it stay in control of the situation, let it decide what happened next. This had to be its choice. That's when it reached out one small hand and touched my arm. Just the lightest touch at first, one finger brushing against my skin. The touch was so gentle, so careful, tentative. Then it pressed its whole hand against my forearm, feeling the texture. Its fingers traced along my skin like it was fascinated by the smoothness, by the lack of fur, by how different I was from it. It looked at my arm, then at its own furry arm, seeming to compare them. Then it touched my face very lightly, fingers exploring, my cheek, my jaw, my forehead, always gentle, always careful. I felt this strange connection in that moment, this profound sense of communication happening without words. This wasn't just an animal following instinct or reacting to stimulus. This was something intelligent, something aware, something that thought and felt and wondered about things. Something that could make decisions and contemplate new situations. Its eyes met mine as it touched my face, and I saw understanding there. Real understanding. Recognition of me as another thinking being. Another creature with awareness and feelings. We were different species, obviously, dramatically different, but there was some fundamental similarity, some shared quality of consciousness. I studied it just as carefully as it studied me. Noticed when it opened its mouth slightly that it had small teeth, white teeth that looked more human than animal. Noticed the way its fingers moved so deliberately, with intention and purpose, not just grasping randomly, the expressiveness in those dark eyes. The way its brow would furrow slightly when it seemed confused or curious about something. The way it would tilt its head when considering something new, all very human gestures. This was something that shouldn't exist according to everything I'd been taught, everything I'd learned about the natural world. And yet here it was, real and solid and touching my face with gentle curiosity. We sat together like that for a while longer, maybe another 20 minutes, maybe more. Time felt strange. I wasn't counting minutes, just existing in the moment. The creature would touch different parts of me, my hands, my arms, my face, my hair, always curious, always gentle. At one point, it touched my jacket, feeling the fabric, seeming puzzled by it. It pulled at the zipper, watching how it moved up and down, fascinated by this strange object. I let it explore, let it learn about me and the strange things I wore and carried. But then reality started setting in. The sun was higher in the sky now, it was probably close to noon, and this was a baby, completely alone. I looked around the clearing, really looked, scanned the trees, the underbrush, the shadows, listened carefully for any sounds of something bigger approaching, something large moving through the forest, breaking branches, heavy footsteps, anything. Nothing, just normal forest sounds, birds calling to each other, wind moving through the leaves making them rustle and whisper, small animals rustling around in the underbrush. A squirrel chattering somewhere above us in the trees. Where was its mother? That was the question that kept pushing itself forward in my mind. Why was this tiny thing wandering by itself? It was too small to defend itself against predators. Too vulnerable. A mountain lion could kill it easily. A bear wouldn't hesitate if it felt threatened or was hungry enough. Even a pack of coyotes could be dangerous to something this size. I started to worry, really worry. This wasn't natural. Baby animals don't wander around alone, especially not animals that seem this intelligent. They stay with their mothers, stay protected. This creature should have been with its family, not alone in a clearing crying. Something had happened. Something had gone wrong. Maybe the mother was injured somewhere. Maybe she'd been killed by something. Maybe this baby had gotten separated and lost during some kind of danger. Or maybe there was another explanation I couldn't even imagine. But whatever the reason, this small creature was alone and vulnerable, and it needed help. I made a decision then that might have been foolish, probably was foolish, definitely could have been dangerous. But it felt right at the time. It felt like the only thing to do. I couldn't just leave this small creature alone out here. I gently took its small hand in mine, very slowly so it could pull away if it wanted to. My hand engulfed its tiny one. Its fur was surprisingly soft against my palm. It didn't pull away, didn't resist. Just looked at my hand holding its hand, then looked up at my face. Like it was asking a question, like it wanted to know what came next. I stood up slowly, very slowly, still holding that little hand. The creature stood up straighter too, watching me. I I started walking back toward my cabin, taking small steps, going slow. The creature hesitated for just a moment, then walked beside me. Its gait was strange, not quite human, but not quite ape-like either, something in between. It walked upright naturally, comfortably, like this was how it was meant to move. Every few steps, it would look up at my face, as if checking that I was still there, still safe, still trustworthy. The walk back felt completely surreal, like I was in a dream or having some kind of hallucination. The sunlight through the trees seemed too bright, the colors too vivid. Everything had this hyper-real quality. Here I was, holding hands with a baby Bigfoot, leading it through the forest like it was a lost child I'd found in a parking lot, which, in a strange way, I suppose it was. A lost child, just not a human one. We walked slowly, and I found myself talking to it, just quiet, gentle talking, describing where we were going, telling it about the cabin, that it would be safe there, that I'd give it something to eat and help figure out what to do. I don't know why I talked to it. Maybe for my own comfort as much as its. Maybe because the silence felt too heavy. Maybe because some part of me already understood this creature could understand more than it should be able to. The creature was quiet during the walk, but it made small sounds occasionally, little huffs and hums that might have been its version of talking, or just sounds of comfort, like a child might hum to themselves when nervous. It held my hand the entire way, its grip surprisingly strong for something so small. Occasionally, it would stop to look at something, an interesting rock, a colorful leaf. Each time I'd stop too, let it look, let it take its time. We weren't in a hurry. When we got back to my cabin, the creature stopped at the edge of the clearing and looked at the structure. Its eyes went wide. It had clearly never seen a building before, had never seen anything made by humans. To me, the cabin was just a simple wooden structure, old and weathered and ordinary. But to this creature, it must have seemed impossible, mysterious, maybe frightening. I gave its hand a gentle squeeze and kept walking, encouraged it to come with me. After a moment of hesitation, it followed. We walked up the 2 steps onto the porch, and I opened the door. The hinges creaked like they always do. The creature tensed at the sound but didn't run. I led it inside into the dimmer interior. The creature looked around with those enormous eyes, taking everything in. The wooden walls, the furniture, the windows with light streaming through them, the wood stove with its black metal pipe going up through the roof, the shelves with books and canned goods, the table and chairs. Everything was new and interesting and strange. It touched the wooden wall gently, feeling the texture, ran its fingers along the table edge, looked up at the ceiling, following the line of the roof beams. I let go of its hand, and it immediately looked at me with what seemed like concern, so I showed it my hands, empty and open, gave it a smile. Then I went to my small kitchen area, moving slowly so it could see what I was doing, talking the whole time, narrating my actions. The creature watched me intently, following my movements. I heated up some soup I'd made the day before. Just simple vegetable soup from a recipe I'd learned from my mother. Carrots, potatoes, onions, celery. Nothing fancy but filling and good. Poured it into a bowl and brought it over to where the creature was standing. As I held out the bowl, I said the word clearly. Food, pointed at the bowl. Food. The creature sniffed it cautiously, leaning forward with its small nose. Its nostrils flared. Then it looked at me, and I swear there was a question in its eyes. Is this for me? Is it safe? I took a spoon and showed it how to use it, bringing soup to my mouth and making exaggerated eating motions. The creature watched very carefully, like it was memorizing the movements. Then it tried to copy me, taking the spoon in its small hand. The grip was awkward and the spoon wobbled. It managed to scoop up some soup but spilled most of it on the way to its mouth. It got a little taste and seemed to like it. Made a small sound of approval, but the spoon was clearly frustrating. After a few more attempts, it gave up and just lifted the bowl with both hands and drank from it directly, like drinking from a cup. It made small, satisfied sounds while eating, happy little hums. When it lowered the bowl, there was soup on its face around its mouth, and the sight made me smile despite everything. It looked so much like a messy kid. I could see it was hungry, really hungry. Whatever had happened to separate it from its mother, it probably hadn't eaten in a while. When the bowl was empty, it looked up at me with those big eyes. There was something in that look, gratitude maybe, or trust, or just recognition that I'd helped it. Whatever it was, it made my chest feel tight. After eating, the creature seemed more energetic, less scared. The food had helped. It started exploring the cabin more actively, touching everything, looking at everything, moving around the space with growing confidence. I sat on the couch and just watched it, still trying to process what was happening, still trying to wrap my mind around the fact that this creature existed at all. I remembered I'd brought a small rubber ball with me, just a bouncy ball, the kind you can get at any store for $1. I'd brought it thinking I might use it for some stress relief, just bouncing it against the cabin wall when I needed to think. I took it out of my bag and held it up. The creature immediately focused on it, curious. I bounced it once in the wooden floor. The ball made a satisfying thump sound and bounced back up. The creature's eyes lit up immediately, like I'd just performed magic. It watched the ball arc through the air, completely focused. When it bounced near the creature, it reached out and grabbed it with both hands, clutching it to its chest. Then it tried to bounce it like I had. The ball hit the floor and bounced back up, and the creature made an excited sound. A high-pitched sound that might have been laughter. It started playing with the ball, bouncing it, chasing it when it bounced away, exactly like a human child would play with a ball. We played together for almost an hour. I'd roll the ball across the floor and it would chase it. I'd bounce it off the wall and it would try to catch it. It would bring the ball to me, holding it out, wanting me to bounce it again. The creature seemed genuinely happy, making those sounds that seemed like laughter, moving around the cabin with growing confidence and energy. But even while I played with it, smiled at its antics, part of my mind couldn't stop thinking about its mother. Where was she? Was she looking for her baby? Was she hurt somewhere, unable to get back to it? The questions kept circling in my mind. While the creature was occupied with the ball, clearly content for the moment, I stepped outside, told it I'd be back soon. It looked at me with concern but didn't try to follow, just sat on the floor hugging the ball and watching me go. I walked back to where I'd found it, moving quickly this time. The walk took maybe 8 minutes at a good pace. When I got there, I started looking for any signs of something else having been there, signs of the mother or other creatures. I found some impressions in the soft ground near where the baby had been. They could have been footprints, much larger than the baby's small feet, maybe twice the size. The impressions were deep, suggesting something heavy, something big. I knelt down and examined them closely, but they weren't clear enough to be definitive. The ground was covered in leaves and pine needles. Tried to follow them, moving in the direction they seemed to lead. But after maybe 20 yards, they became unclear. Too much leaf litter, too much hard ground where nothing left prints. I searched the area for maybe 40 minutes, walked in widening circles from where I'd found the baby, looked for broken branches, disturbed vegetation, anything that might indicate where these creatures had been. Found a few possible signs, but nothing conclusive. No sounds of anything calling. No sounds of something large moving through the forest. No sign of another creature searching for the lost baby. It was like this little one had appeared out of nowhere, like it had been dropped there by magic. I stood there in the forest, listening, really listening, hoping to hear something. Some call or cry, some indication of where its family might be. But there was nothing, just forest sounds, just the wind and birds and small animals. When I got back to the cabin, the sun was getting lower in the sky. The light was taking on that golden quality it gets in late afternoon. Evening was approaching, the creature was still inside, and when I opened the door, it looked up at me with what seemed like relief, like it had been worried I wouldn't come back. It had the ball in its hand still, holding it against its chest like a security object. I realized night would be here in a few hours, and I couldn't just put this baby back outside in the dark. It would be completely vulnerable to predators. Night is when the dangerous animals hunt, mountain lions especially. And even if I wanted to return it to the forest, where would I take it? I had no idea where it had come from or where its family might be. I'd searched and found nothing, made the decision to keep it safe for the night. In the morning, when it was light again, I'd search more thoroughly. Maybe the mother would come looking once she realized her baby was missing. Maybe she'd track it to my cabin. Maybe there was a chance for a reunion. As darkness fell outside, the creature started getting anxious. It put down the ball and started following me around the cabin, staying close, never more than a few feet away. I realized it was probably used to being with its mother at night, not alone or with a strange human in an unfamiliar place. Night probably meant safety and comfort and family for this creature. And now all of that was gone. I set up a sleeping area for it near my bed using extra blankets I kept in a chest at the foot of the bed. Made a soft nest on the floor, folding the blankets to create a comfortable hollow. The creature watched but seemed uncertain about it. Watched me arrange the blankets but didn't approach, just stood there looking worried. I made dinner for both of us, heated up some canned stew I'd brought with me, beef stew with vegetables. Gave the creature a portion in the same bowl it had used for soup earlier. As I handed it the bowl, I said the word again. Food, pointed at the bowl. Food. Wanted to reinforce the connection. The creature looked at the bowl, then started eating. It ate hungrily again, using his hands to scoop up the chunks of meat and potato. I also gave it some crackers from my supplies, and as I did, I said it again. Food. The creature seemed to enjoy the crackers, crunching them carefully, making small, satisfied sounds with each bite. After dinner, I could see it was getting really tired. The day had been long and probably very stressful for this little creature. It was yawning, these big yawns that showed all its small teeth. Rubbing its eyes with those little furry hands, very human gestures that made my heart hurt. I led it to the blanket nest I'd made, gently guiding it over. It climbed in hesitantly, curling up in the soft blankets. But it kept looking at me with those big, dark eyes, whimpering softly, small distressed sounds that clearly communicated what it needed. It wanted me close, needed me close. I sat down on the floor next to the blankets, right beside where it lay, reached out and gently stroked its furry head. The fur was soft under my fingers, thick and warm. It leaned into my touch immediately, and I felt its small body relax a little, some of the tension leaving it. I started humming softly, a lullaby my mother used to sing to me when I was small. I didn't remember all the words anymore, but I remembered the melody, simple and repetitive and soothing. The creature's breathing slowed down as I hummed and stroked its fur. Its eyes started to close, the long lashes fluttering. But every time I tried to move away, even just to shift my position or stretch my legs, it would stir and make distressed sounds, would open its eyes and look at me with panic. So I stayed there, sitting on the hard wooden floor beside it with one hand resting on its small back, feeling it breathe. Feeling its heartbeat, feeling the warmth of its body through the thick fur. Eventually, it fell into what seemed like deep sleep. Its breathing became slow and regular. Its body went completely limp in that way sleeping children do. I carefully got up, moving as slowly and quietly as I could, and moved to my own bed, pulled out the couch into a bed, and lay down on top of the covers, fully dressed. But I couldn't sleep. My mind was racing too much. What was I doing? Was this really happening? What would I do tomorrow? Should I try to find some kind of authority to report this to? But who would believe me? And what would they do to the creature? Take it away to study it? Keep it in a cage somewhere? The thought made me feel sick. Around midnight, I heard the creature making distressed sounds, small cries and whimpers that pulled me immediately from the half-doze I'd fallen into. I got up and went over to it, kneeling beside the blanket nest. It was having what looked like a nightmare, twitching and whimpering, moving its arms and legs like it was trying to run from something. I knelt down and stroked its fur, speaking softly, telling it everything was okay, that it was safe, that I was here. It calmed down gradually under my touch, the nightmare releasing its hold. Went back to sleep with my hand on its shoulder. I ended up just sleeping on the floor next to it for the rest of the night, grabbing a pillow and blanket from the bed and making myself as comfortable as possible on the hardwood floor. Every time it stirred or made a sound, I was right there, could reach out and touch it, reassure it. Several times during the night, it would wake partially, would reach out a small hand to touch me, making sure I was still there. Then it would settle back down, like a child checking that their parent was still nearby. Morning came with the creature patting my face gently, small pats like it was trying to wake me up. I opened my eyes to find it leaning over me, looking at my face with curious eyes. The morning light was coming through the window above the bed, soft and golden. It was awake and seemed curious about the morning light, about this new day. I got up slowly, my back and hips aching from sleeping on the floor. Stretched out my stiff muscles, feeling things pop and crack. Rubbed the sleep from my eyes and yawned. I made coffee for myself, taking a bit longer with the process than usual because I was so tired. Ground the beans with the hand grinder, filled the percolator with water from the pump. Got the fire in the wood stove built up enough to heat it. While the coffee brewed, I heated up some oatmeal for both of us in a pot on the stove. Just simple oatmeal with a bit of brown sugar and cinnamon. As I poured it into the bowl for the creature, I said the word once more, "Food!" The creature watched me carefully, then took the bowl and ate the oatmeal eagerly, making those happy eating sounds. After breakfast, I went outside to use the outhouse. When I came back and opened the cabin door, something stopped me in my tracks. I could hear a voice inside, a small voice, speaking. For a second, I thought maybe someone else had arrived, had come to the cabin while I was outside, but that was impossible. We were too remote. No one ever came out here. Heart pounding, I stepped fully inside. The creature was standing near the kitchen area where I'd prepared breakfast. It was looking at the pot where the oatmeal had been, the one I'd left on the counter to wash later. And then it turned to me, looked right at me, and very clearly said the word, "Food." One simple word, but perfectly pronounced, perfectly clear, like any human child would say it. I stood there frozen, my hand still holding the door, my brain trying to process what I'd just heard. It looked at me with those big eyes and pointed at the pot with one small furry hand. "Food," it said again. I felt like my brain had short-circuited, like reality had just broken. This creature had just spoken to me. In English. A simple word, yes, but a human word. a word in my language. I'd said food multiple times over the past day when giving it meals, had pointed to the bowl and said food each time. And somehow, in less than 24 hours, this creature had learned the word, had connected the sound with the concept, understood how to use it to communicate with me. This wasn't mimicry like a parrot repeating sounds without understanding. This was genuine language use. This was understanding. This was intelligence. I managed to nod, still feeling stunned, like I was moving through water. My hands were shaking slightly as I went over to the pot and gave it another small portion of oatmeal, scraped it out into the bowl with trembling fingers. The creature took the bowl and ate it happily, making those satisfied sounds. I sat down heavily on the couch, just watching it, trying to process what had just happened. This changed everything. Everything. Throughout that day, I watched the creature carefully, wondering if it would try to say the word again, wondering if it could learn other words. I pointed to things occasionally and said their names: the ball, the cup, the blanket. The creature would watch me, those big eyes focused on my face, watching my mouth form the words. But it didn't try to repeat anything. Just watched, listened, maybe learning, maybe not. The only word it had spoken was that one. Food, the word that mattered most to survival, the word I'd said the most often, the word that meant something concrete and important. By afternoon, I was still thinking about it, replaying that moment in my mind, the sound of its voice, the clarity of the word, the intelligence in its eyes when it had pointed at the pot. This wasn't just a smart animal. This was something more. Something that could learn human language. Something that could communicate across species. The implications were staggering. And I had no one to tell, no way to prove it. Just this one experience that sounded impossible. That evening, I tried again to find signs of its mother. Waited until the heat of the afternoon had passed and it was cooler. The creature watched me prepare to leave with what seemed like concern in its eyes. I told it I'd be back soon, and it settled on the couch with the ball, watching me go. I walked in widening circles around the cabin, looking and listening, covered probably a mile in various directions, looked for tracks, broken branches, disturbed vegetation, listened for calls or sounds of large movement, found nothing new, no fresh tracks, no signs of any large creature, no sounds of anything searching. When I got back as the sun was setting, the creature greeted me at the door with obvious relief. It had been worried, made happy sounds when it saw me and followed me inside, staying close. The second night was easier in some ways. The creature seemed more comfortable with the cabin, with me, with this strange new situation. After dinner, it went to the blanket nest on its own and curled up. Still wanted me nearby, still looked to make sure I was close, but wasn't as anxious. I sat on my bed reading by lantern light while it fell asleep. At one point during the night, I woke up to find it had climbed onto my bed and was curled up next to me. Just wanted to be close, wanted the comfort of another warm body. I didn't make it go back to the floor, let it sleep there beside me. The third morning changed things. I woke up and the creature was already awake, sitting up and looking toward the door, making small sounds, not distress sounds, but alert sounds, like it was listening to something, sensing something. I got up and looked outside through the window, but didn't see anything unusual, just the forest, just the early morning light filtering through the trees. Made breakfast and we ate together. But the creature seemed distracted, kept looking toward the windows and door, kept making those alert sounds, like it knew something I didn't. After breakfast, I decided to take it outside for a bit, let it get some fresh air and movement. It had been cooped up in the cabin for over 2 days now, It probably needed to stretch its legs, move around more freely. We walked around near the cabin, staying within sight of the building. The creature seemed to enjoy being outside again, climbed on fallen logs with surprising agility, touched different plants, curious about them, explored like any curious child would, but it stayed close to me, never wandered far, always checked to make sure I was nearby. Looking back at me every few moments with those expressive eyes. We were maybe 50 yards from the cabin at the edge of the clearing where the trees started to get thick again when I heard something that made my blood run cold. A low sound somewhere between a growl and a cough, deep and menacing. The creature heard it too and went completely still, froze in place. Then I saw it moving through the trees to our left, a mountain lion, big one, probably male based on the size, moving through the undergrowth in that slow, deliberate way cats do when they're hunting. That focused, stalking movement. It had spotted us. More specifically, it had spotted the small creature. To that cat, the little Bigfoot probably looked like prey. Small, young, vulnerable, easy meat. Everything happened fast after that. The mountain lion started moving toward us, picking up speed, no longer stalking but actively pursuing. The creature behind me made a terrified sound, a cry of pure fear. Without thinking, acting purely on instinct, I stepped in front of it, put myself between the cat and the baby. I raised my arms above my head to make myself look bigger, started yelling at the top of my lungs, making myself as loud and threatening as possible. The walking stick I'd been carrying, I held it up and waved it around like a weapon. The mountain lion paused, maybe 20 feet away. It was watching us, those predator eyes calculating, deciding if we were worth the risk. I grabbed a rock from the ground and threw it as hard as I could. It landed near the cat with a loud thud, and the cat flinched back. I kept yelling, kept making myself as big and threatening as possible, making as much noise as I could. Behind me, I could hear the creature whimpering in fear. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears, feel it in my throat. The standoff probably only lasted a couple of minutes, but it felt endless. Finally, the mountain lion decided we weren't worth the trouble. Too much noise, too much fight. It turned and slunk back into the forest, disappearing into the undergrowth. I stayed there, arms still raised, watching the trees, making sure it was really gone, making sure it wasn't circling around. My hands were shaking, my legs felt weak. When I was certain the cat had left, I turned around. The creature was pressed against the back of my legs, trembling, looking up at me with huge, frightened eyes. Then it did something that broke my heart. It reached up and grabbed my hand with both of its small hands, held on tight, like I was its anchor, its safety, its protection. I picked it up without thinking, lifted it into my arms like you would a scared child. It wrapped its arms around my neck and held on tight. I could feel its rapid heartbeat against my chest, feel its small body shaking. I carried it back to the cabin quickly, watching the trees the whole way, half expecting the mountain lion to come back. Once inside, with the door closed behind us, I sat down on the couch. The creature stayed in my lap, face buried against my shoulder. I could feel its breath hot against my neck, feel the trembling slowly subsiding. I stroked its furry back and spoke softly, told it we were safe now, that everything was okay, that nothing would hurt it while I was here. We stayed like that for a long time, maybe an hour. The creature gradually calmed down. Its breathing returned to normal. The trembling stopped, but it didn't want to leave my lap, didn't want to let go, just wanted to stay close, stay safe. I let it, held it like you would hold a frightened child who needed comfort. The rest of that day was quiet. We stayed in the cabin. The creature seemed shaken by the morning's encounter and wanted to stay close to me. Followed me everywhere. If I went to the kitchen area, it came with me. If I sat down, it sat beside me. If I stood up, it stood up too. It needed the reassurance of my presence. And honestly, I was pretty shaken too. That mountain lion could have attacked us, could have hurt or killed a small creature, could have hurt me. I kept replaying it in my mind, thinking about what could have gone wrong, how quickly things could have turned bad. That night, the creature didn't even try to sleep in the blanket nest, climbed straight into my bed and curled up next to me, pressed against my side like it needed the physical contact, needed to know I was there. I didn't mind. After the danger we'd faced together, after I'd put myself between it and a predator, something had shifted, some bond had formed, deeper than before. I fell asleep with my hand resting on its small back, feeling it breathe. The fourth morning, I woke up with the creature still curled against me. Still asleep, I lay there for a while just thinking about what I should do, about what would happen next. I couldn't keep this creature forever. It needed its real family, its mother, its own kind. But I also couldn't just abandon it in the forest. Not after everything, not after it had learned to trust me, not after I'd promised to keep it safe. When it finally woke up, it looked at me with those big eyes, reached up and touched my face gently with one small hand, like it was making sure I was real, making sure I was still there. Then it made a soft sound, not a word, just a small hum. But it felt like communication, like it was saying good morning, like it was acknowledging our connection. We spent that day together like we had been, playing with the ball, sitting together, just being near each other. But throughout the day, the creature kept going to the door, looking outside, making small sounds, not the alert sounds from before, different sounds, softer, almost like it was calling for something, calling for someone. I understood. It missed its family, its mother. Of course it did. No matter how safe it felt with me, no matter how much it trusted me, I wasn't its real family. I was just a human who had helped it when it was lost and scared. A temporary guardian, not a replacement for what it had lost. That afternoon, the creature sat by the window for a long time, just looking out at the forest, making those soft calling sounds occasionally. I sat beside it, not saying anything, just being there. At one point, it looked at me. Our eyes met, and in that moment, I swear it understood. Understood that I would help it if I could, that I wanted it to find its family, that I cared about what happened to it. As evening approached, the creature became restless, more agitated than I'd seen it since that first day. It kept going to the door, then coming back to me, then going to the door again, like it was torn between two things, between the safety of the cabin and something else, something outside. Around 8 o'clock, it was standing by the door, making those calling sounds more insistently. I went over and knelt beside it. "You sense something, don't you?" I said softly. It looked at me, then back at the door. Around 9 o'clock, I heard it. Heavy footsteps outside, slow and deliberate, something big moving around the perimeter of the cabin, walking in a circle around the building. The creature immediately became alert, excited, started making sounds I hadn't heard before, happy sounds, urgent sounds. It scratched at the door gently, bouncing on its feet. My heart was pounding again, but this time not from fear, from anticipation, from hope. This was something large, had to be. The creature's reaction told me everything. It knew who was out there. This wasn't danger. This was family. I went to the door slowly, my whole body tense. The creature was practically vibrating with excitement beside me. making constant happy sounds. I opened the door carefully and stepped out onto the porch. The small Bigfoot rushed past me immediately, running down the porch steps. In the clearing in front of my cabin, just at the edge of the trees where the shadows were deep, stood an enormous figure. At least 7 feet tall, maybe 8, hard to tell in the dim light. Covered in dark reddish-brown fur, the same color as the baby but deeper, darker, more mature. Broad shoulders that looked incredibly powerful, massive arms. This was clearly an adult female, the mother. The small Bigfoot ran straight to her, making these happy crying sounds, sounds of pure joy and relief. The mother bent down and gathered the baby into her huge arms, lifted it like it weighed nothing. I stood there on the porch, completely frozen. My legs wouldn't move, even if I'd wanted them to. I watched the mother check over her child, turning it gently in her arms, looking for injuries, running her large hands over its small body, examining it carefully. The baby was chattering away, making rapid sounds, pointing back at the cabin, at me, clearly trying to tell its mother everything that had happened, where it had been, who had helped it. After checking her baby thoroughly, seeming satisfied it was unharmed, the mother stood up to her full height. She was massive, intimidating, powerful. She looked directly at me. And those eyes were so intelligent, so aware, so completely unlike any animal I'd ever seen. I felt pinned by that gaze, like I was being judged, measured, evaluated. The moment stretched out impossibly long. Neither of us moved. I barely breathed. The mother clearly understood her child had been with me, had been inside that human building, had been cared for by a human. What did she think of that? I had no way to know. Her face showed no expression I could read. The dark fur, the heavy brow, the alien structure of her features. I couldn't tell if she was angry or grateful or neutral. Couldn't tell if I was in danger or if this was okay. Then, very deliberately, the mother made a sound. Not a word, just a low sound from deep in her chest, resonant and powerful. The baby responded with its own sounds, still talking, still trying to explain. The mother looked at me one more time, a long, assessing look. Then she shifted the baby in her arms, holding it against her chest. The baby turned its head to look at me over its mother's shoulder. Those big, dark eyes found mine even in the dim light. And then the baby raised one small hand, waved it slightly, like saying goodbye, like acknowledging me, like thanking me. I couldn't move, couldn't speak, my throat was too tight. But I managed to raise my own hand, wave back, a simple gesture, a farewell, a wish for safety and happiness. The mother turned away from the cabin, started walking toward the forest, toward the deep trees. She moved silently despite her enormous size, just glided into the darkness like a shadow. The baby kept looking back at me as they moved away, small hands still raised, still waving until they disappeared completely into the darkness, into the forest, gone like they'd never been there. I stood on that porch for a long time after they'd vanished. The forest was completely quiet. Not a sound, not even the normal night sounds, like everything was holding its breath, like the forest itself was acknowledging what had just happened. I don't know how long I stood there. Could have been 10 minutes, could have been an hour. Time felt strange again. Eventually, I went back inside, sat down on the couch where the creature had spent so much time. The blankets from its sleeping nest were still on the floor. The bowl it had eaten from was still on the table, unwashed. The rubber ball was on the floor where it had left it. Physical evidence that it had all been real, not a dream, not a hallucination. Real. I felt empty, exhausted, but also strangely grateful. Grateful I'd been able to help. Grateful the mother had found her baby, grateful they were together again, and grateful for that one moment, that one impossible moment when a creature that shouldn't exist had looked at me and spoken a human word. Food. One simple word that proved everything, that proved intelligence, that proved the ability to learn and communicate across species, that proved these beings were more than anyone knew. I didn't sleep much that night, just lay in bed replaying everything in my mind, every moment from start to finish. The first time I'd seen the baby in that clearing, its curiosity and trust as it touched my face. The journey back to the cabin, playing with the ball, the mountain lion, and the terror of that moment, the way the creature had clung to me afterward. And that morning, that stunning morning when it had looked at the oatmeal pot and said, "Food," clear as day, unmistakable. One word, just one word. But it changed everything. The next 2 days at the cabin were strange, lonely in a way they'd never been before. I kept expecting to hear the creature making sounds, kept looking at the couch, expecting to see it there. The cabin felt empty without that small presence, without those big, curious eyes watching me, without those soft sounds it would make. On my last morning before heading home, before packing up to leave, I walked to the place where I'd first found it. That small clearing where the baby had been alone and crying. I carried some food with me, bread, apples, some nuts, probably foolish, probably pointless. But I wanted to do something, wanted to leave some kind of offering, some acknowledgement of what had happened. I set the food down carefully at the base of a tree, arranged it neatly, and as I did, I said the word, softly, just barely above a whisper. Food. Wondered if they were out there somewhere, if the baby would remember, if it would tell its mother about the strange human who taught it a word, if they would understand what this offering meant. I walked back to the cabin and packed up my things, loaded everything into my car, took one last look at the place before driving away. The cabin looked the same as always, just a simple wooden structure in the forest. But it felt different now. It would always feel different because of what had happened there, because of what I learned. On my last pass before leaving for good, I walked back to that clearing one more time. Checked the spot where I'd left the food. It was gone, all of it, every piece. Something had taken it during the short time I'd been packing. The bread, the apples, the nuts, completely gone, no trace left behind. I stood there looking at the empty spot, and I smiled even though I was alone in the forest. Even though no one would ever believe this story, I liked to think it was them. That the baby had remembered the word, had brought its mother to the place where the safe human left food, that they had accepted the offering, understood what it meant. But I'd never know for sure. I drove home that afternoon with a story I could never tell anyone. No photos, no video, no physical proof of any kind. Just my memory, just the sound of that small voice saying one simple word. Food. A word that a creature that wasn't supposed to exist had learned from me, had understood, had used to communicate. A word that proved there was real intelligence there, real understanding, real ability to learn and adapt and connect across the barrier between species. But who would believe me? Without proof, it just sounds like a crazy story, a fantasy, something someone made up for attention or because they were confused or mistaken. I'd be dismissed, laughed at, told I must have seen a bear cub or been dreaming or made it all up. So I don't tell people, I keep it to myself. This one impossible experience that changed how I see everything. But it did change something in me, changed it fundamentally, changed how I see the world and my place in it. There are mysteries still out there in the wild places, intelligent beings living in the shadows, avoiding humans, keeping their existence hidden. things that science hasn't explained or hasn't acknowledged or doesn't want to acknowledge, things that don't fit into our understanding of the natural world. I'd been part of one of those mysteries, had held a lost child's hand and kept it safe for a few days, had fed it and protected it and comforted it when it was scared, had heard it speak, had watched it learn, had seen intelligence in those dark eyes that was unmistakably real and deep. And then I'd watched it go home to its family, watched it return to the wild where it belonged. I still go to the cabin several times a year. Every time I look for signs, listen for unusual sounds in the forest, pay attention to things that seem out of place or strange. I haven't seen them again, not even a glimpse, not a single sign that they're still in the area. But sometimes I feel watched, not in a threatening way, not with fear or danger, but in a peaceful way, like someone checking in from a distance, making sure I'm okay the way I made sure that small creature was okay. Sometimes when I'm there, usually in the evening when the light is fading and the forest is quiet, I talk to the trees, use simple words that might be understood if anyone is listening. Friend, I say softly, safe. And sometimes, though maybe it's just wishful thinking, I swear I can feel something listening, something paying attention, something understanding. I hope that baby is grown now. Hope it's safe with its family somewhere deep in those mountains. Hope it remembers the human who helped it when it was lost. Hope it still knows that one word. Hope maybe it's taught other young ones. Passing on some small connection between our kinds, a bridge between human and whatever they are. And I hope that if any of them ever need help again, ever find themselves in trouble or danger, they'll remember that not all humans are dangerous, that some of us can be trusted, that some of us mean them no harm, that some of us know how to be safe, how to be kind, how to help. That's my story, the one I can never really tell. The week I spent caring for a creature that shouldn't exist. The impossible child who looked at me with intelligent eyes and learned a human word. The baby Bigfoot who said food and changed everything I thought I knew about the world. The experience that made me understand that reality is so much bigger and stranger and more wonderful than we allow ourselves to believe. I'll carry it with me for the rest of my life. This secret, this impossible truth, this one moment when the barrier between species fell away and two completely different beings communicated. One small word, but it was enough. It was everything. For more interesting stories, check this out.